think of Calcutta, India, they usually see images of chaos and poverty. And while those visions still reflect reality, India's second largest city is regarded as India's intellectual, artistic and cultural capital, and offers visitors an opportunity to explore the contrasts of urban slums and rich galleries, as well as colonial architecture. Well, travel writer Ian Neubauer visited recently and joins us now with a list of things to see and do. Ian, appreciate your time today. Firstly, Calcutta. Look, why? What was the motivation, and how high on the bucket list was Calcutta?
Look, that's a really good question, James. When most travellers go to India, they'll go to Delhi, the capital of India, or they'll go to Bombay, the capital of Bollywood, where they make all those great movies. Or business travellers will tend to go to Bangalore, the IT capital. But Calcutta came onto the international spotlight late last year with the release of the Australian movie Lion, starring Nicole Kidman. Now, it's a movie about a young boy who gets lost on the streets of Calcutta for months on end, wanders around. Eventually, he gets adopted by an Australian couple, grows up in Australia. 25 years later, he flies back to Calcutta and finds his parents. It's a very touching movie. It's created a lot of interest in Calcutta, and that in turn is bringing travellers to Calcutta.
And look, for those people who may have seen the movie, indeed now are persuaded to go and check it out, what would you list as some of the key things to see and do over there?
Okay, well, you mentioned it before, architecture. Few people don't know, but Calcutta was actually the first capital of India. It was established by the British East India Company back in 1690. So it's got more than 3 centuries of European architecture to see. Just walking around and looking at the grand government buildings with marble domes and the Victorian terraces and Gothic mansions, you can spend days and days just wandering around looking at these buildings.
What about accommodation tips?
Okay, so I stayed at a hotel called the Astor. It's a 34-room heritage-listed hotel, the only heritage-listed hotel in Calcutta. It's got a really interesting backstory. It was built in 1905 by the British East India Company. It was used to billet British soldiers until India gained its independence in 1947. And after that, it became a budget hotel. And over the decades, it just became slummier and slummier until 1999. It was basically falling apart. It was put on the market as a distress sale, fire sale. And so after that, what happened is that a guy came along called Devinder Singh Puri. Now, if you've never heard of this guy, in India he's a bit of a household name because he's the founder of HCL, which is one of the largest IT companies in India. It has a stock market capitalization of 6.7 billion. So Devinder grew up in Calcutta. He moved away, but when he came back, he saw this old building and he thought, I'm going to buy it just because of my love for Calcutta to give something back to the city. So he pumped a ton of money into it. He turned it into this luxury hotel. You go inside and it's like being inside a living museum. In the lobby, there's this staircase that's even older than hotel, made out of Burmese teakwood, and it's really fascinating just being in there.
Yeah, looking at some vision of it now, the outside certainly looks very rich, if you like. It's got some interesting colours. What about outside of Calcutta? What can potentially people look to see and do?
Okay, so Calcutta is situated in the northeast of India, and that's the access city to the northeast Himalayas. It's a place very few tourists actually go to. Now, I met a guy called Shala Hussain, a former motoring journalist from Delhi, who gave up life in the big smoke, and he moved to northeast India to do four-wheel drive tours, and he took me up to Tawang. Now, Tawang is a very famous city because it's the site of the Tawang Monastery next to Tibet. It's the second largest monastery in the world after the Potala Palace in Lhasa in Tibet. And in 1959, when China invaded Tibet, the Dalai Lama actually escaped through the mountains from China to India, and he sought refuge in the Tawang Monastery. So when we arrived there after a week on these very bad roads being thrown around all over the place, we got a bit of an inkling of a feeling of relief that the Dalai Lama would have experienced when he finally got to Tawang.
And look, just finally, how do you get there?
Okay, I flew on AirAsia. They have a flatbed premium class where you get a business class bed that goes back all the way. You get a duvet, you get privacy, you get pillows. What you don't get is a chef-cooked meal. You don't get a champagne on arrival, but the prices are very competitive. They're starting at $509 one way from Australia to Calcutta. And if you look at what their legacy airlines are charging, that's about what they're charging for an economy seat. For a business class seat, they're charging $2,000 to $4,000, depends on how far away you buy the ticket. So there really are significant savings there.
Fantastic. Ian Neubauer, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And should worth mentioning as well, Ian travelled to India as a guest of AirAsia and the Astor. Look, that is it.